Everybody knows record labels are shady, maybe even evil. Every few years, we see new artists come out saying the same thing, that their label robbed them, their label trapped them, their label won't let them release music, their label owns their masters, or their label is making millions while they remain dead broke and trapped in debt. You hear these stories from artists in every niche of the music industry. Rappers, pop stars, R&B groups, rock bands, legends, one-hit wonders, new artists, old artists, people who flopped and people who sold millions. TLC was one of the biggest groups in the world and still had to publicly explain how they were broke to their fans. Michael Jackson went to war with Sony. Kanye posted his contracts online in an effort to expose the industry's predatory practices. NBA YoungBoy became one of the biggest artists on the internet and still had issues with his label. And now even Drake, one of the biggest artists Universal has ever had, is going against the same machine that helped make him who he is today. And when you really start deep diving the music industry, you start seeing the same three names over and over again: Universal, Sony, and Warner. The big three combined own about 70% of the industry, with UMG owning more market share than all indie labels combined. This is why record labels in the music industry are nothing more than a big scam. Despite popular belief, record labels haven't always been hated the way that they are now. There was a time when people had actual real love for certain labels because those labels meant something to the fans and the artists that were signing to them. They had their own sounds, their own cultures, and sometimes the label itself told you what kind of music you were about to hear before you even pressed play on a record. For example, Motown Records wasn't just a label. It was Detroit embodied in a label. It was soul music polished to perfection. It was the Supremes, Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, The Temptations, Smokey Robinson, the Jackson 5, all names that would end up becoming legendary in the music industry, and all artists whose music catered to the culture the label was cultivating. With only $800, Berry Gordy built that company like an actual hit factory where artists could come in, be unknown, and then be developed into real superstars. One of the early benefits of record labels was this development stage that people like Barry helped pioneer.
I would notice how the cars on the assembly line would come down. They'd come in a bare metal frame and they go out a brand new car. And they have their quality control where they would check different things, but each station would go and it would move along, and I saw that. So I got the idea that why don't I start an assembly line for singers and artists, and bring them in, a kid off the street, unknown, and put them through a process, and they come out a star. And we actually did that. You know, they went and we had artist development where they would learn to dance and learn to walk and talk, and then when they would come in one door and unknown, and then when they came out of another door, they had a hit record, sometimes #1, and it was great.
Things like that is why Motown became bigger than just their company name, because they took the time to refine their artist and their artist records until they had the exact sound that people would eventually come to expect from their record label. When people saw that Motown logo, they knew they were getting a certain level of talent, polish, and feeling. And Motown wasn't the only label like this. Sun Records is another great example. Sun Records is one of the places where country music, blues, gospel, and rock and roll started crashing into each other. Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, all of these artists were signed to Sun Records, and they had a sound and an energy that helped shape early rock music and even went beyond that, bridging the gap between racial barriers that existed back in the day by bringing soulful music that black people were making to the forefront in a time when nobody else wanted to give it any airplay.
I know him. Yes, I know him. Hey, how you doing, Sam?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to see you.
Ah, glad to see you. Back in those days, records like we cut was called race records.
That's right.
And they didn't play that kind of stuff on white radio stations.
That's right.
Then you got the idea of getting some white kids to sing the black music. And this started rock and roll.
That's right. I guess the most criticism I got was that black people just were not what white people were. And I mean, I knew every one of them done, and they wasn't, I didn't know a race baiter or anything, but they could not understand why I was out here fooling around with a bunch of niggas. I just kept doing my thing. I was just saying we have got to develop something that's good and that at the same time possibly can have an everlasting effect on what humanity thinks of each other.
There's one thing I never felt about you. And when I came in the door, my first time, I never felt any prejudice, you being partial, or make me feel afraid, or make me feel that I had to sit over here, or I had to come around to the back door. Like the first time I came to the Peabody, I sat in the car for 3 hours. I never felt any of that in this building, not once.
Right? That's a throwback clip of Ike Turner and Sam Phillips talking about how they helped shape rock and roll by letting white artists imitate black music so that it would become acceptable. Now, I know a lot of people claim that rock music was stolen from black people, and in a way that is very much true, but when you watch clips like that, it shows that this was indeed a move or a strategy by Sun Records to make this music popular, not necessarily steal it. It was one of the ways that record labels used to play a critical role in music and the world in general. Later on, labels like Def Jam became some of the most important labels in music history. Def Jam propelled artists like LL Cool J, Public Enemy, the Beastie Boys, DMX, Jay-Z, and Kanye West to the forefront. At its best, Def Jam didn't feel like a random company signing random artists just because they felt like they could profit. Def Jam felt like they were more of a movement.
How did you make Def Jam Records happen? Def Jam started out as a company in my dorm room. We started about a year ago. We made good records. We just got a label deal with CBS, Columbia Records, actually, for a whole lot of money.
Nothing that happened was intentional. Nothing. Everything was trying to make something cool to play for our friends that they would like. That was all it ever was. And then selling enough records to make another record.
We did it effortlessly, with love and appreciation for music, and that's it. I didn't think about nothing else but the music.
This is something that people tend to forget when they talk about record labels. There was a point in time where record labels could actually represent culture. A label could take risks, they could build sound, they could become trusted by fans, and if their logo was on a record, people felt like it meant something. But that also made these record labels valuable, and once smaller record labels proved that they could also discover artists, build entire scenes, create new genres, and move culture forward, the bigger companies started paying attention. And instead of building something new themselves, they realized that it was just much easier to buy the companies and the attached cultures that they already had. So over the years, we started seeing these record labels get gobbled up through a series of strategic buyouts. On paper, it might still look like there are all of these different labels competing with each other, but behind the scenes, more and more of these labels were being pulled into the same three corporate companies. For example, Def Jam received a distribution deal through Columbia Records in 1985. Then Sony, one of the big three, bought Columbia later in the late 80s, and this gave Sony a 50% stake in Def Jam's label. Then in 1994, a company called Polygram bought the other half of Def Jam for $33 million. Then a company called Seagram buys Polygram, folds those music assets into what becomes Universal Music Group, and Def Jam ends up underneath UMG's umbrella. Cycles like this continued for years, with the big three purchasing indie labels one after another, using strategies similar to this and using subsidiaries to mask their purchases to avoid being labeled monopolies. But you see how it wasn't UMG that bought them directly. They bought them through their subsidiary that they had purchased previously. When labels start doing things like this is when the music business started changing. The labels weren't just a bridge anymore. It was an asset. The artists that were signed to these indie record labels became assets. The catalogs became assets, and the sound became an asset. And once the biggest companies understood that, the race to own as much of the music industry as possible really began. After all of these mergers, buyouts, and corporate promises, the music industry surprisingly did not suddenly become a fairer place for artists. Every time these companies combined, it was sold to the public like it was about making the business stronger, more efficient, and better prepared for the future. But once you stop listening to the press releases and start listening to the artist, the story starts to sound completely different. You start hearing artists say they were robbed, that they're trapped, that they can't release music, that they have hit records but are still broke, and that they didn't understand their contracts. These are just a few examples of things artists feel after signing major record deals. And a bad record deal doesn't happen on accident. In a lot of ways, bad deals are simply part of the reason why record labels even stay alive in the first place. Their bottom line literally depends on it. And the reason bad deals work in the first place is because a bad deal usually does not look bad when the artist agrees to sign it. In the beginning, it looks like help. It feels like a blessing. It looks like somebody is finally believing in the artist. But the machine is not built to save the artist or even make them prosper. It is built to control ownership. And one of the cleanest and clearest examples of that is TLC, because their story destroys the biggest lie the public believes about music, and that is that if you're famous, you must be rich. TLC was one of the biggest girl groups in the world. They, in 1990, quickly signed into the system through Pepitone, LaFace, and Arista Records. Their debut album was huge, selling over 4 million copies, and then their second studio album did even better, selling over 20 million copies, with over 16 million of those being pure album sales, because at the time streaming didn't exist. They were one of the defining groups of the 1990s, and to the public, TLC looked like they had won in life. And then they got on stage to accept their Grammy and told everybody the truth.
I'll tell it. We're not gonna sugarcoat anything anymore. We've been quiet long enough. Can I get an amen? Amen! All right. All right. Well, I'll put it to you this way. We are the biggest selling female group ever. 10 million albums worldwide. We have worked very hard. We have been in this business for 5 years. And we are broke as broke can be. And we're not like trying to be a sad story. If that was the case, we would have been on everybody's talk show talking about how broke we are. We haven't done that. I know it's hard to believe because we've sold so many albums, but it is possible. That's the deal here. So, and we're not happy at all.
See, fans see the plaques, videos, tour dates, awards, magazine covers, and assume that the money is automatically hitting the artist's bank account. But TLC was standing up there accepting a Grammy at the height of their career and saying that's just not how it works. Eventually, the group went bankrupt in 1995, and Left Eye eventually did an interview where she broke down how the math really played out for them.
All right, this is how a group can sell 10 million records and be broke. And everyone get ready to do your math. When we first started out, we were kind of cocky. Okay, there are 100 points on the album. TLC had 7. Every point is equal to 8 cents. All right? 7 times 8, 56 cents. But as time went on, we learned a lot. That means every time an album gets sold, TLC gets 56 cents. So 10 million records, $5.6 million. Seems like a lot of money. Well, it's not a lot of money when the record company has spent $3 million to record your album. And in the record business, we pay all costs back to the record company. We pay recording costs, video costs. So now we have $2.6 million left. Well, guess what? When you have that much money, you're in about the 47, 48, 49% tax bracket. So that immediately gets deducted to $1.3 million. Then you split the rest 3 ways. You got about $300,000 apiece, if that much. Okay? $300,000. I can buy a nice house with that. And what am I gonna pay my bills with?
As she explained in that video, the label fronts the artist money, but that does not mean that the money is a gift. Everything that the label pays for can be charged back to the artist later once records do start selling. This is called recoupment. Basically, it's a fancy loan. And yes, it comes with interest most of the time. So while the group was generating major money, The bills, deductions, and interest were eating them alive behind the scenes. This is also why advances in the music industry are so misunderstood, because people hear that an artist got a 6-figure or 7-figure advance and they think that the artist just got rich overnight. But a lot of the time, an advance is basically just another loan with a fancier name. The label gives you the money up front and then they recoup that money from your royalties. And sometimes it isn't as clean cut as here's the money that you need to make a project. Sometimes labels employ shady tactics to ensure that they actually recover some of their cost immediately, like telling an artist they can only spend the money with approved producers, managers, and studios, sometimes controlled by the label themselves, essentially feeding the money back to themselves and still expecting the artist to repay the full amount back when their project drops.
They gave somebody a $2 million recording budget. In a $2 million recording budget, they wanted to book a studio every day for 6 months straight. The manager for the artist said, well, if it's $2 million, we finna save some money. We about to take about like 60 to 70,000. We gonna build our own studio. They said the label told them, we won't approve of any place that we don't already pre-select, which means you can't take the budget and go do it a cheaper way. The place they ended up having to basically settle with, it was a mansion in the Hollywood Hills that had a studio in it that they paid $3,500 a day, running through that artist
That's
budget. The label and the person who owned the crib, they got a relationship. That's almost like money laundering. You're making sure that artist budget go to the person you with. You're saying they got a big budget, but you won't give them the budget that they could do what they want.
So on paper, the label is investing in the artist, but in reality, that money can get funneled right back through people that are connected to the same label. So the label gets to look like they're a generous investor while the artist is the one who has to pay the bill essentially twice, if that makes sense. This is why Russ has always been such an interesting voice in this conversation, because Russ isn't anti-business or even anti-record label. He has signed record deals before, but he understands the math and the business behind it. On the Rory and Ma podcast, he basically explained that if a label offers you a $600,000 advance, it's because they believe they can make way more than $600,000 back from you. That they're not giving you the money because they're nice, they're giving you that money because they believe you are worth more than what they are offering, and they want to put you in debt so that you are stuck paying them back.
If a Universal is prepared to give you 600 grand, that's because they think you're gonna make 2 mil. When you start really seeing the fruits of your labor, and labels are willing to offer you these 6-figure deals, $1 million deals, 7-figure deals, it's because you're worth more than that. I jumped ship with Columbia July 2016 because I wanted radio. This is 2016, so it's a different climate, it's a different infrastructure for people listening. It's like Apple Music came out in 2015 for context. You know what I'm saying? Like streaming, even in 2016, streaming was not what it was. I was still looking around the game like, all right, well, I want to be a massive artist. I don't want to be underground. And I'm noticing, well, everyone who's massive has a label. So I'm like, oh, all right, I gotta level the playing field. That's the only reason why I signed. It wasn't because I needed the money, because I was making at that point 100 grand a month. So it wasn't the money. It was, I need to level the playing field because I gotta get access into radio and certain things that I don't have access to. Now, in 2021, if I was an up and coming artist making 100 grand a month, would I sign? No.
That clip is great because it shows the mindset that makes an artist sign even when they're already moving and have emotion. When Russ signed, he already had a fan base and momentum, but he still looked around and saw all the biggest artists in the world had major labels behind them, and he wanted the same kind of push. He wanted airtime on the radio. He wanted the relationships, and that's the part that fans don't always understand. Sometimes artists sign not because they have nothing, but because they believe that the label has the missing piece that will take them from being big to being undeniable. But Russ also said that if he had to do it again, In the current streaming era, he probably wouldn't have taken a deal because streaming changed the way that the leverage worked. If you can build an audience, collect your fans' data, generate revenue, and fund the important parts of your career yourself, then the label's offer starts looking less like a miracle and more like a very expensive shortcut.
Anything you're getting from the label, you can fund it yourself. And honestly, if it's like, well, the label puts up the money to go get radio. Let's say it's 250 grand to like go all the way with it. Which I don't want to play with my own money. I don't want to play with my own money either. Guess what you can go do? Go get a line of credit. I go get $500,000 from a bank and I use it. I gotta now pay monthly. It's still my money at the end of the day, but it's about time value of money. It's about cash flow. It's about peace of mind, right? And it's about going into your pockets. I'll go into the pockets of the bank. So with Chomp 2, I was like, I could fund this. I have millions of dollars in the bank. I could fund it myself. Why? Yo, bank, give me my line of credit. All right, cool. Here's $500,000. Say less.
Now, I do think that the way that Russ explained that is a bit of an oversimplification because not every artist can just walk into a bank and get a line of credit. Banks have their own biases, and not everybody is financially literate or has clean credit. And even if you can get the money for funding yourself, labels still have the relationships that money alone doesn't instantly buy. They have access to radio programmers, playlist editors, media outlets, brand people, touring infrastructure, and other industry gatekeepers. So what Russ said is a bit of an oversimplification, but his larger point is still true. A label's advance is not magic, it is financing. The label is not doing something mystical by giving an artist an advance. They're just making sure that they own enough of the artist upside to make the deal worth it for them. And if the deal is worth it for the label, then you have to ask yourself why. Kreayshawn is one of the clearest examples of how an advance from a record label can turn into a trap. She blew up with her song Gucci Gucci, and for a second, she looked like she might become the next weird internet to mainstream rap star. She was a young white female rapper with a different style, a strange visual aesthetic, and a sound that some people now say was way ahead of its time. The industry saw the hype and did what the industry does. Atlantic, a subsidiary of Warner, one of the big three, came in and gave Kreayshawn $1 million advance. Now, $1 million advance sounds amazing until you remember that that advance is not free money. It's just a loan and the artist has to recoup. And if the project that they put out doesn't work or it flops, that money can turn into a debt that follows an artist around for years, if not for life. Kreayshawn's debut album, Something About Kray, arrived the year after she signed her deal and it peaked at number 112 on the Billboard charts. But the songs that made the most impact were the ones that had already been released years earlier, and the album produced no new hits. It essentially flopped. The public moved on, and Kreayshawn became one of those artists that people talk about like a one-hit wonder, but the debt that she had from her $1 million advance did not move on with the public.
Fuck playing Gucci Gucci. Fuck playing Go Hard. That shit don't go to my pocket.
You don't get any money from that?
No.
Not any like, oh, you get a check for $100.
I literally get a check for $100.
Literally.
Yeah, from ASCAP like every 3 months.
But
that clip is crazy because artists usually beg fans to actually go and stream their hits. Kreayshawn was in an interview basically saying, do not go and play the song because I am not going to see money from it anyways. And that's how bad the deal math can get. A song can go viral, it can become a cultural memory, it can even go platinum, and the artist may still never see a dime. She sent out a tweet that said, P.S. Don't buy Gucci Gucci or stream it. I get $0 from it and I'm in debt to Sony for over $800,000. Stream or buy my new project. Go to my site and sign petitions and use the linked resources if needed. All right, basically begging people to stream the stuff that isn't tied back to the label. And then there's this other post where she shows what looks like a 1 cent payment from her label that says, this is my cut that I got from my album sales. 1 cent is crazy. Kreayshawn's story proves that the internet does not magically fix the label problem just because distribution of records got easy. But if we're being real, money is only one part of the trap. Another part is that a lot of artists do not even fully understand what they're signing when they sign. There are numerous examples of this, but the most notable one is probably Lil Yachty. In an episode of Everyday Struggle with Academics and Joe Budden, he was pressed about what type of deal he was in and whether or not it was a 360 deal. A 360 deal is a type of deal where the label can make money from more than just the record sales and streams that an artist bring in. They can profit from touring, merch, endorsements, corporate sponsorships, appearances, and pretty much every other part of an artist's career. When Yachty was asked if he was in a 360 deal or not, he literally could not answer the question.
If you don't know you're in a 360, you're in a 360. It's like one of those.
Okay.
Then tell me what you want from hip hop.
I'm making music, bro. I'm just having fun. You know what I'm saying? My fans love it.
You have a problem with just having fun and fun.
What do you want me to say? You want me to say?
I want you to be aware of your business. I want you to know whether you're in a 360 or not. I want you to appreciate the culture that changed your life and took you from college dorm room eating oodles and noodles.
Chill.
And I'm not playing that clip to clown on Yachty. I just wanted to show how confusing these contracts can be, especially for younger artists. They're not simple little agreements. They are long legal documents written by lawyers for companies designed to protect the company first. And a lot of artists are signing them before they understand what the business actually entails. They don't understand publishing masters, recoupment, royalty points, options, 360 clauses, audit rights, accounting, or even what actually counts as an album when they sign their deals. This is how you end up with artists who have hit records but cannot explain the contract that controls those records. Tyga's story shows the same issue, but with one of the biggest red flags that an artist can have, and that is bad legal representation. Tyga was young when he signed. He was around Lil Wayne, around Young Money, and around Cash Money at the peak of their business endeavors. Wayne was at his peak when Tyga signed. Their hit record Bedrock was about to become a major single, and through the whole structure of Tyga's contract, which was with Young Money, which is a part of Cash Money, which is a part of Republic and UMG, he pretty much ended up getting screwed by bad legal representation because the lawyer that was representing him was provided by his label, and that lawyer also represented the labels. They had their own legal fight where they accused their longtime lawyer, Damian Granderson, of conflicts of interest and claimed that he cheated them out of millions of dollars by doing the exact same thing, representing both sides. In a lawsuit that they filed, they said that Granderson did not properly disclose his relationship with Quality Control Music, their label, while representing them, and that his actions favored himself and the label over the group. Now, the Migos lawsuit was later dismissed, but the allegations themselves fit a pattern that artists have complained about for forever. The person who is supposed to protect you may also be tied to the people trying to profit from you, and they're always going to favor whoever has the biggest bag. In cases like this, that's the label. What's crazy is Granderson did this not only once, but twice with the Migos. Brian Z. Zisek from DJ Booth pointed out on Twitter that Granderson also did the same thing when the Migos signed to 300 Entertainment. Rory talked about this on the Joe Budden podcast where he shared his thoughts. Now, Rory used to work in marketing at Sony, and his point was simple. It doesn't matter how big the artist is or how big their songs are. The artist is usually not more important to a lawyer than a major company, label, management company, or production company that can keep employing that lawyer over and over and over again.
I don't care if you have the biggest single on earth. To a lawyer, you are not more of a higher priority than a production company or the label that you are signing to. So when the people that you think are managing you offer you the lawyer to then negotiate with the management company, stop right there. That's their lawyer. They will only have your best interest at heart when it profits to the production company or the label.
So by the time an artist signs, the trap may have already been built. And once the artist is inside of the trap, the next problem becomes whether the label actually develops them or is just trying to capture momentary hype and then let an artist's career die out. Designer is the clearest example of that. He was a young artist from Brooklyn who had been building some buzz, but his life changed when his hit record Panda took off and went absolutely viral, selling over 5 million copies and going 5 times platinum. This song was everywhere, and every label on earth wanted a piece of Designer, but he decided to sign with Kanye West's record label, Good Music, which was a subsidiary of Def Jam. Remember, UMG owns Def Jam. So in 2016, he ends up appearing on Kanye's The Life of Pablo album. And just like that, he goes from being a kid with a hot song to standing next to one of the biggest artists in the world.
It was like, damn, like everything is happening so fast. You feel me? Because I just put the record out probably like 4 weeks ago, and now I'm with Kanye, you feel me? And it was like, damn, like, you feel me? So everything kind of was moving real quick. It was fun, but then it started to cause anxiety. You know what I mean? To a point that it was like certain times I ain't know how to move, because I wasn't used to having security guards and shit like that. You know what I mean? I was like, you feel me? I'm just a kid walking down the block, you know what I mean? I'm rapping with my homies. Me and my homies are security, you know what I mean? For each other, you know what I mean?
When all of this happened, Designer was only 19 years old. The song blew up, Kanye was calling, and everything was moving fast. In that moment, signing a deal probably did not feel risky for Designer. It probably felt like destiny. And at first, everything looked like it was working for him. He became a XXL freshman. He performed at the BET Awards. He even dropped a follow-up hit, Timmy Turner. But the momentum for Designer started slowing down, and he talked about wanting to drop an album. He even talked about possibly dropping 2 albums. But instead of getting a properly timed, full-length project while the world was still watching, he ended up only being able to release a very short EP. Around that same time, Kanye locked in with other Good Music artists like Pusha T, who was about to put out Daytona, Tiana Taylor, who was getting KTSE, Kid Cudi was about to release Kid See Ghost, but Designer, the young artist who probably needed that Kanye development the most and probably had the most motion out of everybody on the label, seemed like he was getting left on the back burner. Designer said that he signed to Good Music because he wanted Kanye as a mentor, but Kanye later said that running a record label was the biggest mistake of his life. He said that he never asked to be a label owner and that Sony, another one of the big 3, had offered this opportunity to him and he took it, but he felt like it was a bad idea after doing it because he couldn't always be there when artists needed him. And by 2019, not long after signing with Kanye, Designer was openly frustrated, saying that he didn't view him as a genius like the rest of the world, but instead viewed him as crazy.
You think he's the genius, that niggas think all that nigga shit. Well, the mean nigga, that nigga's crazy, nigga. And the mean nigga, I've been doing shit by myself. To me, nigga, I brought Good Music back.
Eventually, Designer got released from Good Music, and the way he talked after leaving said everything. He seemed happy with his departure from the label and glad that he could finally move on his own time and drop music whenever he wanted.
I can drop anywhere, any second. This is the dream of every artist. This is the dream of every artist. Any second, any time, I get the bag out here, and I'm still touring, I'm still doing my thing. No label behind me right now. This shit is beautiful.
The sad part about all of this is that by the time Designer got his freedom, his momentum had already slowed down drastically and pretty much fizzled out. He continued to release music, but the industry had moved on and he has yet to recapture the buzz that he had when he dropped Panda. Big Sean's situation adds another layer to the Good Music conversation because sometimes the issue isn't just whether or not the label pushes you, sometimes it's about the accounting. On an infamous episode of Drink Champs, Big Sean talked about having to audit Good Music and finding out that there was millions of dollars missing that was owed to him that the label would have never mentioned or paid if he didn't take matters into his own hands.
You know, my manager saw my record deal and said, this is a record deal. I had to spend my own money auditing my label because millions of dollars are missing, and you can tell when millions of dollars are missing.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
So let me ask you before we finish. No, let me ask you, bro.
Yeah.
If somebody owed you $500,000, how would you feel?
Yeah, crazy.
What if they owed you $1 million? What if they owed you $3 million? No, listen. Okay. What if they owed you that, bro?
Right. I understand.
And you showed up for them and you did all these things, right?
Right.
And they up billions.
Now, when artists have to audit labels to find out that they are being underpaid, that really tells you how little transparency there really is in the industry because most artists are not accountants. They are not forensic auditors. They're not lawyers. They are creators. But the money moves through complicated systems, and if the label controls the accounting, then the artist may not know that they are missing money unless they have enough power and legal support to challenge these massive labels. And that's why we eventually seen Kanye West taking his own issues with his label public. For years, Kanye was complaining about his label deal, trying to expose how confusing and controlling these deals could be, even for artists at his caliber. In 2020, he started posting pages from what he said were his Universal Music contracts online, literally tweeting that he needed every lawyer in the world to look at his contracts and help him. And whether people thought the way that he did this was crazy or not, the larger point he was making was hard to ignore. If Kanye West, with all of his money, fame, and leverage, still felt like he had to beg lawyers on Twitter to help him understand and fight his contracts, then what chance does an up-and-coming artist have when a label hands them a deal and says, sign here? Kesha is another artist whose story takes the control issue even further. A lot of people remember Kesha from her songs TikTok, Die Young, Timber, and her feature on Flo Rida's song Right Round. In the early 2010s pop era, her music was absolutely everywhere, but behind the scenes, her career became tied up in one of the ugliest legal battles in modern pop. Kesha had been working with a producer named Dr. Luke and Kemosabe Records from early on in her career, and later her music started to be distributed through RCA, a subsidiary of Sony. But eventually, she was trying to get out of her deals. She said that she had very little creative control. She said that she was forced to sing certain lyrics on songs that she didn't like. And eventually, the situation became big enough that fans started pushing a Free Kesha movement with petitions and protests. Then there were lawsuits that were filed that turned this whole situation into a public war over contracts, control, and whether she could even move forward with her career at all. She levied serious allegations against Dr. Luke, saying that he R-worded her, and stated publicly that she felt trapped in her contracts and that the label did not care about the situation or her as an artist, just that she kept producing records that would make money.
So what are the next steps for Kesha's legal team? I mean, could she break this contract and just pay the fine?
It's really not that simple. They own her. She has said she was psychologically and sexually abused. Then Dr. Luke, her producer, says on the other side, no, that's defamatory, that never happened. Well, that's still pending out there somewhere. What's happened here is that Mark Garagos, as her attorney, has said, I want an injunction. I want all of this to stop. I want her out of her contract because she is under duress working for this producer whom she says has really injured her by being a victim of sexual abuse. The judge says, look, a contract is a contract. If you wanted an out for any reason, you needed, or your representatives needed, to negotiate that in the first place, and you didn't.
I mean, aren't there sort of general outs according to the law that you shouldn't be forced to work under circumstances that you think is harmful to your health?
Well, certainly one would think that you shouldn't be, number one, forced into involuntary servitude.
Yeah.
But what you have here is Sony has said, look, we're going to give you another producer. You don't have to work directly with this guy. You never even have to see this guy. On the other side of that, what Kesha and her lawyers are really afraid of is that if she works with another producer, her stuff is not going to go forward. That she is now in a most favored nation status of this producer. And if she's not going to play ball with them, then she is really going to have a career that is over.
Now, Dr. Luke denied the allegations and countersued for defamation, saying that she was making it all up to get out of her contract. But for the purpose of this video, the main music industry point is simple. Kesha wanted out, and the system would not let her just walk away, even when she says she was suffering from real abuse. They even tried to force her to continue working with Dr. Luke, whom she had levied these allegations against. This is why the Free Kesha era became bigger than just her lawsuit. Fans were showing up outside court. She wore a dress that said, "You will never own me." Artists like Taylor Swift, Lady Gaga, Demi Lovato, Ariana Grande, and others supported her, with Taylor Swift donating $250,000 to her cause. And this became a symbol of what it looks like when a star with massive hits feels powerless against the people controlling her through contracts. And then there is NBA Youngboy, whose deal proves that even becoming one of the biggest artists alive does not automatically mean you own your career or can escape the hands of the big three. Youngboy is one of the biggest streaming artists of this generation. He built a cult fan base off of raw, emotional, street-driven music, and he fed his fan base constantly. He has tens of billions of streams, over 100 RIAA certified releases, and multiple platinum or double platinum projects. And for years, he was one of the biggest, if not the biggest, music artist on YouTube. And if anybody should have had the leverage to control their own career, it should have been Youngboy. But he still ended up fighting with his label over his masters after overly completing his contract with them.
NBA Youngboy. Why did they tell that young man, and I'm getting from the source like the guys, I'm talking to even sometimes their lawyers. Why did Atlantic basically tell Youngboy, listen, after 22 albums that you dropped in a time period where we only contracted you to do 5, hey, we'll negotiate and give you this amount of money, but we ain't giving you a motherfucking part of your masters back. These are real things. What does that mean? When Youngboy started, he's 17, he's 22 now. You don't understand what the fuck going on. He's just putting out music. Bro, you know you just satisfy, theoretically, you satisfy your contract 4 times. They're eating crazy off of you. Look how much they own your YouTube money. They own this. NBA Youngboy was an artist who got a suspended 10-year sentence for being in the drive-by. He not thinking about, whoa, this is what a music contract looks like. This is how I should do it. No, he's just, yo, fuck it, I'm in here.
Happy he's getting money.
So
Happy
now
taking care of his family.
he signs to a label, and the label is seeing 10 times what they even bargained from him. Forget the negotiation power, he doesn't even know what it means.
According to the discussion around his deal, Youngboy signed Young reportedly for around $2 million for 5 albums, and once he became one of the biggest artists in rap, that deal started looking crazy compared to the money that was being generated. At one point, Youngboy posted that they could have the next 4 albums for free if they would just give him his masters, and he still got told no, because the masters are the asset. The masters are the long-term money music generates. The masters are the reasons labels fight so hard to sign artists in the first place. Academics later did a stream where he broke down the other side of the trap in record label deals, which is album counting.
Atlantic's making a killing off Youngboy. But of course, the greatest thing they do is they only called 3 of them an album. Look, now in recording contracts, this is how it works. You're supposed to provide a studio album per year, and the label at its discretion can basically have you turn in or count for each year a project to be a mixtape. So basically they're saying you gotta do 2. So for you to complete the album requirement, usually it's 2. So if you wanna drop 5 projects in a year, it's only gonna be 1 album. They have their reasons like, well, we gotta fully recoup, we're gonna run through the budget, then try to recoup. It's gonna take months. It doesn't happen on a couple spaces of a week. Youngboy's dropped way more than 5 projects. Now, why is he dropping those projects? Because that's his way of staying hot. He feeds the streets. Now, he could have got bitchy and be like, well, if they're not gonna count one of these to my motherfucking album requirement, I'm not dropping. Yeah, so basically he could be like, yo, I'm not dropping any music until y'all count to my album requirement. They're gonna say, well, nigga, we told you only drop once a year.
See, fans see artists like Youngboy dropping constantly and assume that he must be fulfilling his contract, but contracts don't always work the way that fans think they work. A label can decide what counts as an album. They can greenlight an album, or they can absolutely refuse to put songs on an album. A mixtape that an artist dropped might not count. A short project might not count. A compilation might not count. So an artist can be feeding the streets, generating millions of dollars from streaming. They can be keeping the label profitable and still not be getting any closer to their freedom, because the contracts normally allow a label to hold an artist for a certain number of years, regardless of their output, leading to either one of 2 things. They either stagnate and stop dropping because it doesn't matter what their output is and their buzz dies, or they do what Youngboy did and drop anyways with really very little upside for doing it. When his deal with Atlantic was finally fulfilled, instead of re-signing to them, he moved into a smaller deal with Motown Records that had more favorable terms, showing that sometimes the biggest check is not worth walking back into the same cage. And that brings us to the part that labels really don't want artists to prove at scale, which is what happens if big artists stop needing them.
If Drake right now posts a link on a picture on the gram of his new album, Lincoln Bio, new album out, fully independent, Drake will make $10 million a week for 60 weeks.
By the way, Drake is about to get the biggest bag in the history of the music business by far.
He should.
They don't want that to happen, because the day that happens, you might as well close the business down.
If Drake or an artist on Drake's level went fully independent and made that kind of money without giving the machine ownership, it will force every other artist to ask a question that labels don't want asked, which is, what exactly do artists need record labels for anymore anyways? And that's why the system fights so hard to keep artists inside it. So now that we've seen what bad deals actually do, the next question becomes obvious. What are these artists really fighting over? And the answer is ownership, masters, publishing, catalog, because the labels know that that's where the real money is. And to understand that, you have to understand one basic thing about the music business. A song is not always just one thing. Legally, there is the recording, and then there is the song underneath the recording. The actual recording itself is the master. This is the version that people hear, the vocal take, the beat, the mix, the finished audio file that gets uploaded to Spotify, played on radio, used in YouTube videos, dropped in a music trailer, or licensed for a commercial. Publishing is the writing side, the lyrics, the melody, the composition, the musical work itself. So the simple way to think about this is the publishing is the song as an idea.
So they tell you, you make a song, I write a song, and I rap the song, I record the song. Once I release the song, there is what's called a master and a publishing portion of the record. So the master is the recording of it. So if I sign a record deal or a recording deal, I sign away my masters, which means the label owns the recording of that music. On the publishing side, if I write a record and I sign away my publishing in a publishing deal, they own the composition of work. So the idea of it, you know what I'm saying? So if I play your song on piano that you wrote, I have to pay you publishing money because it comes from that idea. Or if I sing a line from that song, it's from the publishing portion. If I sample the actual record, if I take a piece of that actual recorded music, that's from the master.
The label might own the master. A publisher might control the composition. The artist might own part of the writing. The producer might own a piece. A sample owner might have a claim to some of it. And depending on the deal that the person signed, the artist everybody associates with the song might not control the most valuable piece of it. That's why the word master comes up so much. If a label owns the master, the label controls the actual recording. So when someone wants to use that specific version in a movie, commercial, documentary, trailer, video game, TV show, the master owner has to be involved. They can approve it, they can deny it, they can negotiate a fee, they can collect from the use of the master. That means that the artist's voice can become someone else's asset. And when an artist successfully owns a major portion of their masters or of the publishing, that can be powerful for the artist, just like it can be for the label. Sir Mix-a-Lot is a good example of an artist that has tried to maintain both sides, and it has paid off big time throughout his career, just from people continuing to play his records and doing things like sampling them. He says due to the fact that he's maintained his publishing and masters, he's been able to maintain a rich lifestyle since 1992 without the need to put out more hits just from his one song, Baby Got Back.
A lot of people underestimate publishing. When I was at my peak, the royalty check was everything. And that was, you know, every 6 months you got this big lump of money from the label for records sold, and that's all you paid attention to. But publishing is a little bit different in the way it works. There are mechanicals. For every time that song sells, you are supposed to get a mechanical share. So if it, let's just hypothetically say it's 10 cents. I know it's lower than 10 cents, but let's say it's 10 cents per song, up to 10 songs on the album, they prorate it after that, up to 10 songs on the record, and Baby Got Back is one of those songs. So that 10 cent, half of that 10 cent goes to whoever did the music, The other half goes to whoever did the writing, the lyrics. And I maintain both sides of it on probably 98% of all my songs.
How much money has Baby Got Back got made in the time that it's been out? Tens of millions?
Baby Got Back has made a lot of money, bro. I mean, because I believe, first of all, why own your publishing if you're not willing to leverage it? Some people own publishing and just sit around and say no to every single opportunity. But the reason you own publishing is because as you get on in your career, you can still monetize those tracks. So that's the luxury you get from owning your publishing and, more importantly, using it properly. So yeah, Baby Got Back, I mean, tens of millions I think would be low. It's definitely made over $100 million. I can tell you that. I mean, I just look at my lifestyle and where it's been since 1992, and it hasn't fallen off.
This is why labels are so hard pressed to take as much of the publishing and masters as they can, because for a few $1 million on an advance, they can get artists that might potentially drop records that can earn over $100 million and never really have to give them anything more than what they did when the artist signed. So when YoungBoy was asking for his masters, he was asking for the thing that keeps earning after the rollout is over. The thing that can be streamed, licensed, packaged, sold, and controlled, but it's really only one piece of the puzzle. If someone covers an old hit and records a brand new version, they are not using the original master. So the owner of the original master is not controlling the new recording. But the songwriter and publisher still matter because the new version is using the same lyrics and or composition. This is why publishing can be so powerful. The system is complicated by design, and whoever owns the right has the cleanest path to the money. This is where catalog comes in. The catalog is basically a collection of music rights. It could be masters, publishing, or both, because songs don't stop earning just because they're old. This is why you see stories of companies spending insane amounts of money buying old catalogs from legendary artists. Universal Music Publishing bought Bob Dylan's songwriting catalog, which covered more than 600 songs, for around $650 million. Sony bought Bruce Springsteen's masters and publishing in a deal widely reported to be worth around $500 million. These companies are not doing that because they are sentimental. They are doing it because these songs are assets. That's why artists who understand ownership start moving different. Prince understood it. That's why he was fighting with Warner and their fight got so intense. Prince wrote "slave" on his face and it looked extreme to the public, but Prince knew it was about control. His name, his output, his release schedule, his music, all of it had become part of the battle he was having with Warner.
I wasn't really taking large advances from the recording companies. I was recording the albums myself in my own studio. So the way I looked at it, I owned the work because I paid for it. And I did all the work. I created it, so I felt like it should belong to me. That said, the companies felt otherwise. And they would always hold this contract up and say, well, you signed it. And I say, well, I understand that. It's not like I want to leave. I just want to, talk about this thing and see if we can't make it more fair. Of course, they wouldn't change, because if they changed, they wouldn't really exist. It shouldn't be a situation where they own the album or the work. We're talking about intellectual copyright. If they're going to be indeed a delivery service, then that's fine. But even FedEx doesn't say that they own the thing that they ship.
Once I started writing "Slave" on my face, I pretty much knew the outcome. I mean, you have to understand that that word on one's face pretty much changes the dynamic of any meeting that you're in when they see it.
Taylor Swift understood this too. She signed a record deal at a young age, and her deal did not include her having ownership of her records. When she was ready to walk away from her record deal, she offered to buy her own catalog back. But these labels can be so evil that sometimes they do things just to spite the artist. And so instead of selling her back catalog to her, they sold them to a man she notoriously had problems with and didn't even give her the opportunity to purchase her rights. So she decided to re-record record her albums herself so she could create new masters and publishing that she controlled.
I've always wanted to own my own music. You probably don't know this, but most of your favorite artists do not own their work. I made it very clear that I wanted to be able to buy my music. That opportunity was not given to me. My first 6 albums were actually sold away from me, and it was sold to somebody else. So how did you find out? I found out when it was online. Like when it hit the news. You didn't smell it. Yes. So I've been re-recording my first 6 albums because there was a thing that happened where I had wanted to own my work when I changed record labels. My first 6 albums were actually sold away from me. So I decided if I made them the first time, I can make them again.
Are radio stations playing the Taylor version?
Yes, actually, one of the things I was most thankful for, a company of many stations in America called iHeart, and they have sworn to only play my new versions, and they've said that they'll switch it out for the old versions.
Now, Taylor couldn't erase the old masters, but she could compete with them. And the fact that she re-recorded entire albums and thought that it was worth the effort tells you how valuable masters are in the first place. But not everybody is Taylor Swift, and not everybody can get companies like iHeartRadio to agree to play the new versions of their songs for them. This is also why independence keeps coming up in the conversations, because if an artist can fund the music, own the master, control the publishing, and keep their catalog, then the whole equation changes. The artist is no longer chasing a check from the record label, but that's exactly why labels fight so hard to keep ownership in their deals. Once music becomes an asset, everybody wants to own as much of it as possible and are willing to do anything possible to make sure that happens. Some even claim that these labels would go as far as to kill to maintain control. Michael Jackson, he was arguably the biggest musician to ever live, and his legacy is one for the history books. The voice, the dancing, the videos, the albums, his tours, the scandals, the fame, all of it. Michael Jackson was one of those people who became bigger than the music itself. But a lot of Michael Jackson's story also deals with the underlying business of music, the masters, the publishing, the catalogs, ownership. And some people believe that his war with one of the biggest labels in the world, Sony, could have played a part in his downfall, because at some point, Michael started learning how the people behind these hits actually made their money. One of the most famous stories in music is that Paul McCartney helped put Michael on the game about publishing. Paul had money in publishing, and he understood that owning songs could be more powerful than just performing them, and Michael Jackson paid attention to that. He took that lesson, and in 1985, Michael bought ATV Music for about $47.5 million. ATV owned thousands of songs, including a massive portion of the Beatles catalog. So Michael Jackson now owned some of the most valuable music in history.
The decision to get his hands on the Beatles catalog. Tell me about that process.
Well, Michael was good friends with Paul McCartney, and after Thriller, Michael had a lot of money, a lot of cash. So Michael asked me to call Paul McCartney and Yoko Ono, his good friends. He did not want to bid against them. And I spoke with Yoko, and I said, Yoko, are you bidding on this catalog? And she said, no, we'd be thrilled if Michael could get it rather than some big corporation. I spoke to Paul McCartney's lawyer, who said they were not bidding. So we went out. It took us a year to close that deal. It wasn't easy. There was a lot of competition. But Michael was passionate. He wanted to invest in things that he was passionate about. So we did buy the Beatles catalog. We later bought some Elvis Presley copyrights. And that publishing company now forms the cornerstone for his network.
This purchase made Michael a very powerful man in the music industry and was the start of his problems at Sony, because Sony was also a bidder for ATV's catalog. And ATV's catalog included songs from people like Little Richie and Elvis Presley. Over 4,000 historical songs in total, and Michael did this while he was still signed to Sony. When an artist is only performing, the industry can treat them like talent. But when that artist starts owning rights, starts buying publishing, starts owning catalogs, and starts understanding the back end, the artist isn't just talent anymore. They are competition. And Michael's catalog situation only got bigger from there, because in 1995, just 10 years after purchasing ATV, Michael merged ATV with Sony's publishing operation after they paid him a whopping $95 million, creating Sony ATV. On top of that, Sony only got rights to about half, so 50%, while Michael kept the other half, and together, that company became one of the most powerful publishing companies in the world. And this is where Michael's story starts getting darker, because by the early 2000s, Michael's relationship with Sony was ugly. He released his album Invincible in 2001, and even though the album sold millions worldwide, Michael believed that Sony did not push it the way that they should have and tried to stifle him because of the deal with ATV. He felt like the label was sabotaging him and conspiring against him, and Michael was not quiet about it.
The record companies really, really do conspire against their artists. They steal, they cheat, they do whatever they can, especially the black artists. Sony, Tommy Mottola. Tommy Mottola is the president of the record division. He is a mean, he's a racist, and he's very, very, very devilish.
Sony sucks! Sony sucks! I want to hear the guys in the back!
I've generated several $1 billion for Sony. They never thought that this performer would outthink them. I'm leaving Sony a free agent, owning half of Sony. So I own half of Sony's publishing, and I'm leaving them, and they're very angry at me because of it, but I just did good business, you know?
See, Michael was doing something that labels hate. He was pulling the curtain back. He was telling people that the company was the enemy. And around that same era, Michael's music started sounding angrier too. His song, They Don't Care About Us, is one of those records that feels different when you place it next to everything that he was going through. And that is part of why the conspiracy around Michael Jackson has never really died, because when you look at the timeline, it's easy to see why people start asking questions. After his beef with Sony, he started having real problems. The first major allegation storm against Michael Jackson came in 1993 when a 13-year-old boy accused Michael Jackson of abusing him after Michael had befriended him and his family. This story became massive. Police investigated, the tabloids went crazy. Michael denied the allegations, but the family filed a civil lawsuit, and eventually the case was settled out of court. But Michael was always headstrong in his belief that he was innocent.
As you may already know, after my tour ended, I remain out of the country undergoing treatment for a dependency on pain medication. There have been many disgusting statements made recently concerning allegations of improper conduct on my part. These statements about me are totally false. As I have maintained from the very beginning, I am hoping for a speedy end to this horrifying experience to which I have been subjected. I will say that I am particularly upset by the handling of this mass matter by the incredible, terrible mass media. At every opportunity, the media has dissected and manipulated these allegations to reach their own conclusions. I ask all of you to wait and hear the truth before you label or condemn me. Don't treat me like a criminal, because I am innocent.
Why did you settle the case? And it looks to everyone as if you paid a huge amount of money.
Most of that's
to get
folklore.
silence.
I talked to my lawyers and I said, can you guarantee me that justice will prevail? And they said, Michael, we cannot guarantee you that a judge or a jury will do anything. And with that, I was like catatonic. I was outraged.
How much money?
Totally outraged. So what I said, I have got to do something to get out from under this nightmare. All these lies and all these people coming forward to get paid in these tabloid shows, just lies, 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 lies. So what I did, we got together again with my advisors, and they advised me, it was hands down, a unanimous decision, resolve the case. This could be something that could go on for 7 years.
How much money
So
was
let's get it behind us.
Can you say how much?
It's not what the tabloids have printed. It's not all this crazy outlandish. No, it's not at all. I mean, the terms of the agreement are very confidential.
Now, whether somebody believes that first allegation or not, the business effect was undeniable. Michael's image took a massive hit. He went from being almost untouchable to being surrounded by scandals, suspicion jokes, headlines, and late night TV punchlines. The conversation around Michael Jackson started changing, and it was no longer just about the music. It was about whether Michael Jackson was secretly something darker behind the scenes. 2 years after that allegation is when he merged ATV with Sony. Then years later, after he went to war with them publicly, another legal storm hit. In 2003, Michael was arrested in a separate case involving another young boy who had spent time around Michael Jackson and his Neverland ranch. Prosecutors accused Michael of abusing the boy, and once again, the media went insane. Cameras were outside the courthouse every day, and once again, Michael addressed the allegations publicly.
In the last few weeks, a large amount of ugly, malicious information has been released into the media about me. Apparently, this information was leaked through transcripts in a grand jury proceeding, where neither my lawyers nor I ever appeared. The information is disgusting and false. Years ago, I allowed a family to visit and spend some time at Neverland. Neverland is my home. I allowed this family into my home because they told me their son was ill with cancer and needed my help. Through the years, I have helped thousands of children who are ill or in distress. These events have caused a nightmare for my family, my children, and me. I never intend to place myself in so vulnerable a position ever again. I love my community, and I have great faith in our justice system. Please keep an open mind and let me have my day in court. I deserve a fair trial like every other American citizen. I will be acquitted and vindicated when the truth is told. Thank you.
2 years later, in 2005, after one of the most publicized celebrity trials ever, Michael was acquitted on all 14 counts against him. But for this video, the point is not whether you believe Michael was innocent or guilty. The point is that while Michael was fighting for ownership, while he was fighting Sony, calling out record labels, and sitting on one of the most valuable music catalogs in the world, his public image was being destroyed. Some people believe that these allegations were used to damage his credibility. Some believe the media turned him into a freak show so people would stop listening to what he was saying about the music business. Some believed that the label did not need to win the argument against Michael if they could make the public see him as crazy, weird, and unstable. Because if the biggest artist in the world is standing outside saying Sony is evil, record labels are racist, black artists are being robbed, and executives are conspiring against artists, the easiest way to beat him is not to debate him. Sometimes it's easier to discredit him, to make the story about his face, about his skin, about his voice, about his behavior, about the allegations. Make it about anything except the catalog, anything except ownership, anything except the money. That's why the Michael Jackson conspiracy is just hard to laugh off, because even if you don't believe every theory, the motive is not hard to understand. The catalog was worth a ton. Sony ATV was worth a ton. Michael's stake was worth a ton, and Michael was becoming very loud. Then came This Is It. Michael was preparing for a massive comeback tour in London, and these shows were supposed to put him back on the stage in front of the world. But before those shows ever happened, Michael Jackson was pronounced dead. Officially, his death was ruled a homicide caused by acute propofol intoxication. His doctor, Conrad Murray, was convicted of involuntary manslaughter, and that's the official version of the story. But the official version has never stopped people from wondering who really benefited from Michael Jackson being gone, because there are two different questions here, right? Who gave Michael the drugs, and then who benefited after Michael died? And members of Michael's own family have questioned it publicly. LaToya Jackson said that she believed Michael was murdered over his catalog and that the doctor was simply a fall guy.
Conrad Murray is simply the fall guy. This was definitely something that was premeditated, that they had planned to do, and they planned to take my brother out, and my brother knew it. And that's why he told me repeatedly and repeatedly and repeatedly that this was going to happen to him. He explained it to me. He explained it's because of my catalog, which is my publishing, and they're after it, and they want it, and they want their hands on it, and they want to take it away from me. So Michael developed this love-hate relationship with his catalog. I don't want it because it's going to destroy my life. No, it's mine. I'm going to keep it. I'm not going to let them rip it apart and take it from me. This went back and forth. I began to see his personality change. Michael had notes in his house saying how he hates John Branca, he hates Randy Phillips, he doesn't want them around, he'll never fly with them. He just went on and on expressing how he felt about these people. These people were all involved. Mind you, the will, I truly believe and I know that the will is fake. Because Michael was in New York when the will was signed, and they say he signed it in LA, and he did not. And they know this, but yet they put themselves as the executors on this estate. There was another guy that was in the will, Barry Siegel, but he pleasantly removed himself from it. Why would he do that? Because he knew that it was fake and he wasn't going to get involved in the skullduggery. That's why.
And in 2016, after Michael died, Sony bought his 50% stake in Sony ATV for $750 million, giving them control of the publishing company that Michael once co-owned.
Unlocking some iconic songs. Sony will buy Michael Jackson's stake in the world's largest music publisher for $750 million. Under the agreement, Sony will pay a lump sum of about $730 million, as well as distributions to the deceased pop star's estate. Sony ATV Music Publishing controls songs such as the Beatles' All You Need Is Love, Moon River, and the Mission Impossible theme. The deal gives Sony control over the joint venture formed with Michael Jackson in 1995.
I'm not saying that proves Sony killed Michael Jackson, but I am saying this is the exact kind of timeline that makes people believe something darker happened, because when you follow the money, the ending is hard to ignore. The artist who fought the machine is gone, that catalog remains, and the company that he fought with ended up owning the rights that they were fighting over. And that is what makes Drake's fight with Universal such a perfect place for this story to land. Drake helped define the streaming era. For over a decade, he was the guy that labels could point to when they wanted to prove the new system worked or a new style could work. Streaming records, playlist dominance, global hits, viral moments, catalog value, non-stop output, all of it. Drake became one of the most valuable artists Universal Music Group has ever had. And in 2022, UMG locked him into one of the biggest artist deals in music history, and reports put it at around $400 million. It was a massive, multifaceted agreement tied to recordings, publishing, merchandise, all of it. But because Drake has become so massive, he was actually able to leverage himself into a situation where he actually owns 50% of all of his rights on music he puts out through this deal, having it split between UMG and his own label, OVO, which is a subsidiary of Republic. This shows not only how much power artists have when it comes to negotiating, but just how valuable the music is long term, because UMG was willing to give him $400 million up front and still split the records 50-50. That should put into perspective how equitable these deals are for these labels to be able to concede so much money and rights just for the privilege of owning half.
By the way, from what I heard, you know what Universal did? Universal removed Cash Money, Young Money, and now they split ownership. The new deal with Drake, they split ownership of the music with OVO. So it comes out on OVO Republic, and that's through negotiation. That means later on when Drake want to buy his shit back, it's going to be a little cheaper because you own half of some of them. But you think Universal is going to be like, oh, you want to take care? I'll take that shit back. No, nigga. They probably look at Drake and like, nigga, we'll give you $100 million before we give you that shit back. Get the out of here, nigga.
And for a while, that relationship between Drake and UMG made sense. Drake was still one of the safest bets in music. Every album he drops moves units, every release creates conversation. But once the Kendrick Lamar beef exploded in 2024, Drake's relationship with the machine that had been pushing him started to change. Kendrick and Drake were trading records back and forth, and the whole thing turned into one of the biggest rap battles that we've ever seen. But the strange part is that both Kendrick and Drake were technically signed to Universal. Drake's music runs through Republic under UMG. Kendrick's music runs through Interscope, also under UMG. So while the public was watching these two rappers tear each other apart, the parent company was sitting above both of them, profiting from the whole thing. Then Not Like Us dropped. It accused Drake of being a predator, put that accusation over a beat that people could dance to, and turned one of the worst things that you can call somebody into a worldwide chant that even people who had spent years cultivating a relationship with Drake were seen singing it. People like LeBron James. Not Like Us landed Kendrick Lamar a spot performing at the Super Bowl halftime show and even won him a Grammy. But not long after, Drake dropped a massive lawsuit, not on Kendrick Lamar, but on UMG. His complaint basically argued that UMG published and promoted the record while knowing it was damaging his reputation. He accused the company of turning this damaging allegation into a viral product, pushing it through covert methods like using bots to inflate the streaming numbers and profiting from the damage to his reputation, and refusing to deal with him privately when he tried to address it as a business problem. And Drake's UMG lawsuit is crazy when you actually sit down and read it. Drake's lawyers pointed out that UMG controls both sides of the situation, Lamar's music and Drake's music. They also say that UMG had the power to control copyright restrictions on the record and lifted them or whitelisted the song on platforms like YouTube and Twitch, so reaction channels, streamers, and creators could spread it everywhere without the usual copyright issues that they would have when using UMG's music.
Universal Music Group has filed a motion to dismiss rapper Drake's defamation lawsuit over Kendrick Lamar's song Not Like Us. Universal Music Group is the parent record label for both artists. Drake's lawsuit alleged that UMG promoted the diss track even though it included false pedophilia allegations against him. But in UMG's scathing motion to dismiss, they say that Drake is only suing because he lost a rap battle that he provoked and took legal action to salve his wounds.
Now, a lot of people made this lawsuit about Drake suing because he felt hurt and was trying to stifle free speech. They painted him as simply being upset because he quote unquote lost this rap battle. But when you actually read the lawsuit, that's not really what the suit is about. Drake is essentially claiming that what they did was try to diminish his value, to tarnish his reputation, similar to what Michael Jackson was claiming was happening to him. UMG obviously denied the allegations. Spotify denied that there was evidence that it helped inflate the record at first, but eventually did delete hundreds of millions of streams from Not Like Us because the streams were fake. And then in October of 2025, out of nowhere, a judge dismissed Drake's defamation suit, saying that the claims in Not Like Us were protected opinion in the context of a rap battle, and that by going back and forth with Kendrick Lamar, he essentially agreed to the battle. Now, Drake has appealed, but even with the legal setbacks, the lawsuit still exposed something ugly about the music industry. Drake was basically saying his own parent company helped turn him into the villain of the year, and many believe it was so they could in fact use that as leverage when it eventually came time for him to negotiate a new deal. The theory is that UMG was upset with how much leverage Drake had when it came to negotiations, and they were mad that they had to pay him so much money and were upset that he in fact was becoming an owner of his own catalog. And that's where the Michael Jackson comparison starts creeping back in. With Michael, you had a superstar fighting with Sony, while accusations involving children helped turn his public image into a circus. With Drake, you have another superstar fighting with a major label, while a song accusing him of being a PDF became one of the biggest records in the world. It's different situations, different errors, different facts, but the playbook feels similar. All right, make the business argument disappear under scandals, jokes, headlines, and humiliation. The artwork for Not Like Us used an image of his Toronto mansion with S-offender style markers placed all over the top of it. Then, during the peak of the beef, a security guard was shot outside of Drake's home in Toronto.
Welcome back to Live Now from Fox, and we do have some breaking news that we want to get to. This is some aerial footage of the house from Drake. This is the rapper Drake right there. This is his house in Toronto, there was a shooting that happened earlier outside Drake's Toronto home, and one person was injured in this. According to TMZ, sources confirmed the injured person is a member of Drake's security team. Now, police have yet to say if they believe the shooting is related to the Kendrick Lamar feud. Drake and Kendrick Lamar have been feuding for quite some time, releasing diss tracks against one another. But again, police have revealed the victim suffered a gunshot wound to the upper chest, and it does appear to have been a drive-by attack. Also, there has been impact across the Atlantic. In London, someone reportedly vandalizing Drake's store, spray painting, quote, "They not like us" on the store's front window.
Drake's lawsuit later argued that the song and its promotion put him and his family in danger. Now, nobody can sit here and prove that UMG caused this incident, but the timeline gave the conspiracy side of the internet exactly what it needed. Drake would eventually hit back by dropping 3 albums in one night: Iceman, Habibi, and Maid of Honor. A flood of music, dozens of songs, and a rollout that immediately had people wondering if he was trying to finish his obligations with UMG and exit the label. Drake even fed that theory in the music that he put out. On his song Janice Shut the Fuck Up, he says that his label needs to free him, and on Dust, he calls himself a corporate America hit survivor. And there are dozens and dozens of other examples from these albums where Drake takes shots at his label. He's still releasing through the same system. The videos still say OVO under exclusive license to Republic, a division of UMG. The songs are still moving through the machine, but the lyrics sound like somebody counting down the days until he can leave. Labels started as a bridge between artists and the world. Then they became the bank. Then they bought the culture. Then they merged into 3 giants. Then they trapped artists in contracts, took masters, bought catalogs. Universal, Sony, and Warner do not have to sign every artist directly. They do not have to control every song at the source. They just need enough control over the roads that the artists have to travel once the music starts moving. That is the music business. The dream is sold as freedom. The contract turns into control, and then the music becomes an asset. And the asset always finds its way back to the people who control the road.